thank you for the privilege of transporting us into the company of the 24 elders, the 4 living creatures, the myriads of angels in heaven, as they surround the throne, and the Lamb who is seated on the throne, in a shouting to one another, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who is, and who was, and who is to come. Father, we thank you for the honor, for the privilege to be part of that company this morning. Lord, visit us. Speak to us, each one of us by name. May we come on our knees. May we come to you. May we do the bidding of your word as you speak to us. In Jesus' precious name. Amen. I'd like to express my thanks and gratitude for the leadership of the church for asking me to step in here this morning. It's a privilege to bring the word of the Lord. And how dare you to speak on behalf of the Lord. Okay, today is Caring Sunday, and I would like for us to just meditate on 2 Corinthians chapter 8, looking at the example of the Macedonian churches. They are given in austere times, a worthy example for our emulation. I believe we live in those times in Nigeria. When you look at the statistics, one of the things I'm just wondering is, do we have a database in EPC for the poor? We do have something on the widows. Do we have on the poor? Do we have on the orphans? Do we have on the needy? Have we defined who is the needy? What is the bottom line? So how can we say we're giving to the needy when we don't have a base to guide us? That's really sober when you look at the statistics of where we are. I have poverty in Nigeria. Poverty rate is 87 million Nigerians. That was raised to that point. That's 38.9% in 2023. I don't know what the data is for 2025 out of 200 million. From 1985, we go up to 1990, we have 47%. In 1992 was 52%. In 1996 was 58.4%. In 2003 was 47.9%. It was dropping and dropping, and then we're back to 38.9% in 2023. This is a source of World Bank. How poor are you? In our days in university, I remember in 1976-77 was 75 kobo to the dollar. And today is 1,576. I don't know what the last figure was yesterday to the dollar. That's the official rate, I hear. The unofficial rate, who are the business people here? Sorry? 1,600. What? Sorry? 1,650. What is the minimum wage? How many states are paying the minimum wage? How many billionaires do we have in Nigeria? How did they get that money? And when you read the Bible, there are 200 times in the New Testament alone, the NIV Bible, the poor appears 200 times. The needy appears 70 times. And then 80 direct references to widows, and more than 60 to orphans or fatherless throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. So Nigeria is a blend of conflicting realities. And we don't really have true statistics in Nigeria, do we? Where are the academics? Everything is... So poverty is the lack of income and resources to cater for the daily necessities of life. Nigeria's poverty rate measures the percentage of Nigerians who live below the international extreme poverty line of $2.15. That is daily. That is the 2017 quotations. The World Bank's first attempts to measure the poverty level in Nigeria revealed that 47.8% of Nigerians live in extreme poverty. So with the current things that we're experiencing, Nigeria can be classed into the rich, and the rich is very rich and stupendously rich and whatever rich. All the rest of us are classed into the poor. We have the poor, the very poor, the basket case, and the extremely poor. Those who used to earn 700,000, what does it cost now? The air ticket from Lagos to from Jos to Lagos and back, one way is 390,000. I flew to Enugu from Jos in 1979. I paid, guess what? It was 17 naira. So our optimism for gaining independence from the UK, we never got independence, did we? I don't know who is enslaving Nigeria now. The UK did, the politicians did, Nigerians are enslaving Nigerians in our own land. So it is in the midst of this extreme poverty that the scriptures are challenging us to give to the needy, to give to the poor, the orphans, the destitute, whatever you name them. Do we have a database in EPC? That's a challenge for the board. So how can we meaningfully, practically, reach those we claim are poor without the statistics? We are doing a guess throwing, so of course we miss it all the time. How many people can pay hospital bill? How much is the drug for those above 60s who are on amlodipine, or I don't want to give you all the different names? How much is a tablet of amlodipine, 5 milligrams? That is the current food for those who are hypertensive. And you take it 30 days or whatever days in each month. And that's what is keeping the blood pressure down. What about the other different ailments? What about surgeries? So how many of you have been inundated by requests To the point where it is annoying. In fact, I've tried to block some people from my... It's distressing. I know a guy whose wife is on grade level 14. His children, one of them works in the customs and immigration. His daughters are married to very rich people, but he's asking me, situation is critical. Please send whatever you can. So we live in those realities to the point where we are all in distress. That is the situation where God is calling us as believers to rise up and practically meet the needs of one another. Okay, let's look at the example of the Macedonian church as we look at our text. So, Paul was writing this letter to the Corinthian church, where we have the 12 dozens. That's a very tough church, the church in Corinth. There are all kinds of things that are in that church to show you how humanly they are. But it's interesting that Paul says that they were excelling in a number of things. He says that that church have been the foremost in everything. It says in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in love. What is EPC excellent for? What do we beat our chest for? What are we excellent for? Our ability to organize, our ability to do things in order, our abilities and all the different abilities, all the different professional groups here, maybe 40-something professional groups here, more than any church and I know of. I don't have the statistics. But in here, at least we have more than 40 professional groups, and many of the people are at the peak of their career in this church. What are we excellent for? Now, this very church, that's why Paul was writing to this church and said, okay, you are excellent in these areas, but there's something that is lacking. And then he uses a very interesting example. We'll look at the different examples he points to. But he points to the churches in the Macedonian churches. Remember Macedonia, when Paul and his companions were thinking of going on missionary journey, they were going to go east. And they saw the vision. They had a vision of a man from Macedonia that says, come over and help us in Macedonia. So that's how the gospel went west. And that west continued west. UK, Europe, America, and it's going round before it comes back to east. That church, the group of churches in Macedonia, became an example. But the thing about the church in Macedonia was that they were extremely poor. And I don't know what index that was used in describing their level of poverty. But they were described as really being poor. In fact, some of the things that were mentioned there, when you read those challenges, you would weep. When you think of it, that we're living in opulence. And we don't have the heart to reach those amongst us. One of the things the churches did in Brazil, Jim Peterson was sharing this story, and he wrote that some years back. and said the church in Brazil, when they faced a situation like this, came together. That is the church. They came together. The business people put money together. And they gave those money to each other. And they helped to raise themselves to a level where the church was supporting itself in diverse ways. One of the things that EPC has done is to set up the EPC Men's Forum Cooperative. But in that cooperative, there are some people here who have borrowed money and have refused to pay. And that money is not accessible to others. That's what church should be doing. Any extra things that you do not have, bring it together in a pool where people can access. But also, it means that the church needs to be responsible and hold people accountable. One of the things that we learn from scriptures in giving and receiving is that when you give your money, you should hold people accountable, even in giving. There are many people who would inundate you with requests, but you don't know what they're using that money for. God will hold you responsible. You are responsible in giving money responsibly and reasonably to people to use that to meet the needs they have, not spending it frivolously. So that means we need to hold one another accountable in the way we do. So we have this cooperative. We have other things. But for us to be able to show that we are a church that is integrated and we're working according to biblical design and principles, we need to be more detailed in the things we are doing and putting those things together so that we know how we are operating. In this church, we have transporters, we have business people of all cadres, I don't know the amount of money that we have corporately together as EPC. As we are sitting here, who knows the total amount of money that we put together here from the different accounts? Maybe it's up to 2 billion, I don't know. We're saying, You see, because you have not seen money, so you can say, But if we are down to earth, and that's what Paul is calling us, and that's why Paul is using the example of the Macedonian churches. Who would use the example of EPC in this generation to say there's a church I know in Jos that they are, even in their extreme poverty, so to say, they are giving meaningfully and practically are reaching those who are weak and poor. I know some people have sent me requests for medication. I don't know how to. It's painful to think of. So, how many requests can you respond to? I have tended to tell some people that I've retired, but can you tell people you are retired? They say, so what? That's what they mean when they keep asking you for requests. Share that pension money you have. That's what they say. So let's look at the example of the Macedonian churches. It says, out of their extreme poverty, they gave beyond their ability. They gave beyond what they can actually do. First, they gave themselves to the Lord in accordance with the scriptures. So that's the first thing we need to do. We need to give ourselves first to the Lord as his slaves, as his bond servants. He has entrusted us all kinds of resources, material, liquid, practical, whatever it is, grains, all kinds of things. God has endowed us with resources and so on. If you have the ability to create money, you have a resource. So it says, first we need to give ourselves to the Lord. And when we do that, then we, his bond servants, will do what he wants us to do. There's a fly here. Okay? So we will do what he wants us to do. He will guide us. He will show us who to give to. But something that will help us to be very practical and pragmatic in that is that we have a statistic, we have a database to function. That's the challenge of caring committee or the board of elders. Give us a data. Bring it up every month and say, this is where we are. So that this is where we are. This is our poverty index in EPC. So we know how to respond to those. First, they gave of themselves in accordance with what the Lord wants. Because that's when we become malleable in the hands of the Lord to do his bidding. So that's what they did. And then they gave. Interestingly, Paul says, you Corinthians were the first to ask about the needs. You are the first to respond. We want to give to this situation. To the church in Jerusalem, the mother church was in trouble. And that's why Paul was mobilizing all the resources, all the churches, to collect offerings and take to the church. Of course, they found credible people who handled this money. So it looks like way back then, people were dishonest and corrupt. So they looked for worthy people to handle that money, to take that thing to the church. So if there were churches in Nigeria who are in trouble, how can we respond as a church? Do we have something on the ground that we can take and respond to those needs? We hear of people being in hospital in admission. The board receives all these messages. But what can the board do? We give our paltry offerings, which is a change. Where will it go? How far can it go? What are the hospital bills for an admission? How much is hospital bed? And what is the statistics of those who are 60 years and above in EPC? Membership committee, Anatu. Give us the statistics. What are the ages 40 to 50? So those are the people you will now begin to prepare how to support the aged. We have so many people who are at home, in bed, cannot come out. How can we say that we're a church? How can we say that we are doing church? How are we responding? So that was the first example, the Macedonian churches. They learned how to give. I read of an account how people were contributing to the needs of the church in the Asian, Indonesian area. And they didn't have much. They were giving grains. A father and his family and his son gave their chopstick. They didn't have anything to give. In fact, one of the sons, they gave out one of the bulls. You know, you hitch cows to farm. They gave out one so that the son would be the second one that the bar would stay. So because they were looking for how they would support the needy, to give to the needy. And a white man was quite impressed with that. They said, no, if we had more things, we would give of ourselves. Are we responding to the needs in our environment? Are we sharing this burden so that some people are not blocking people, because some will soon start blocking certain numbers that come every day. It's coming every day because one brother said he doesn't know where to go to. So I should be patient. So he told them about the Macedonian churches, that they were poor and in trouble, but they gave all they had, far more than anyone could expect. They have a very interesting concept. Aristarchus, in Acts 28 verse 2, Paul was going, he had appealed to Caesar. He was going to Rome to face Caesar and face death, besides being in prison to be executed. Now, the Macedonian churches didn't even have ways to support him. So one of their members, Aristarchus, how many people do you know have the name Aristarchus? I think the Mogavul people, I think they have those complicated names. There's some Aristarchus in that group. Not many. I don't know of any family in EPC that has their son named Aristarchus. So they sent Aristarchus to go with Paul. Aristarchus had to be eligible. And the ways for him to become eligible was that he offered himself to be Paul's slave. That's how he became eligible. And that he would stay with Paul in prison to serve Paul. In those days, if you were in prison, you were in stocks. You couldn't move. You couldn't do things for yourself. You couldn't fend for yourself. It's the people around who are serving you that will go around and fend for something. Aristarchus gave himself to be a prisoner so that he could serve a brother in need. How many people are willing in EPC to be a prisoner? We have people in a hospital. How many EPC members have gone one day to sleep to relieve our brethren whose family members are on admission? That's the equivalent. We hear of people going into hospital in and out. How many of us respond? We do the nicest things, the niceties, or whatever we call them. We just go and hang around for a few minutes and disappear. We have greeted them to ease of our conscience. And to say we have done the needful. Where is practical Christianity? Where is that humility and servanthood? And saying, look, you couples, you have been on this admission. If a person is on admission, you shut down your system. You shut down your economy. You shut down that poultry that is bringing you resource so that you would stay there and meet. Because we don't have nursing care again like the way it used to be. If you were in admission, it was a 24 hours duty of the nurses to provide that. They don't do that again. So you go to the hospitals, who do you see? A milling around of relations. All kinds of people are there. Who feeds those people? How do they fend for themselves? Teaching hospitals, do you have facilities for bathrooms? Where do people buy food? What kind of foods do they eat? Are they become sick too? And they need hospitalization. Where is the church? So we see the example of Aristarchus. There's another example from one of the churches in Macedonia, this time in Philippi. That was Aristarchus from Thessalonica. That church, when they turned to God, when you read 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, it says, truly they turned from idols to serve the true and living God. It showed in their lives. So this time around we have Epaphroditus. How many people know that name? Epaphroditus from Philippi went also to support Paul. That was the example that Paul was citing there. In that support, he became sick to the point of
to die. And Paul says, when you read the account in Philippians, he said, God delivered us from sorrow upon sorrow when he heard our prayers and rescued Epaphroditus. Can you see? How many Epaphroditus are in EPC? Those guys sacrificed whatever they were doing. They left it to help Paul. And when you read Acts 20, you will see the names of these people there. These are the people that Paul discipled, who are with him. When the time came for the need, they were there for him. And Paul mentioned one more example, a final example. He says Jesus Christ. Remember Jesus Christ. It was not only that Jesus Christ went to the cross. No. It was not only that he died for our sins. No. I don't know that the meeting that took place amongst the triune God, where the Son volunteered and said, I will go. He left the sublime of glory. His glory. Do you know what that means? He left his glory. Look at us, earth. He could have said, let's create some new people who would obey us, some zombies, who will not give us difficulties. He left the sublime of glory. He left, he said, I'm willing to go. And he came down to mean earth. He suffered. Can you imagine what it is to be a human being? To walk those dusty roads. And then he went to the cross. And he opened his hands willingly. And he was naked on the cross. Drunk to the dregs. Everything. So that he might take our sins. That was the third example that Paul gave. Jesus. And Jesus is our example. That's how we should respond. We are under the message. We are all under the authority of the word. No one is above the scriptures. We all come under. We take these examples and go in the week and reflect on them and weep and ask where we are when we receive those requests again. I'm talking to myself. Pause and reflect. God has blessed each one of us with so kinds of things. We have things in our home. When you die, people will be struggling to sort out all the things you have accumulated. Some will choose shoes, some will choose their trousers, whatever they can find. It will be auctioned. It will not go into your account. Practical way is to give out everything you have before you die. Give them out. Give them out. So God is calling EPC this morning first to give of themselves to the Lord in accordance with what God desires. Because if you are a slave, if you are a bond servant, you know the guy who says in Exodus that, Master, I love you. His master has given him freedom to go. He says, no, I love you and I love my children. I don't want to go. So if you say you don't want to go, what is the practical thing you have done? They take you to the temple doorpost and they use an awl and pierce through your eye to the doorpost of the temple. Every day, everyone witnesses that you are now a bond servant to your master. You are no longer free to go. because you love your wife and you love your children. And Jesus is calling us to be his bond servants. So we don't have any freedom. So are we willing? Are we willing to go that dusty road of Calvary, the road of shame? People were not given applause when he carried that cross and walked. That's the path he's calling us. In the area of giving, let's give until we now begin to sweat. This message is to me first before you. Let's give. God has given you strength. I mean, you are in your late 60s, entering 70s. God has given you strength. Many have died yesterday, today. Go and read the obituaries. Many have died. I know people who died yesterday. 2 people who died yesterday. I know. Close. Some will die today. We don't know who. Some will die tomorrow. I don't know who. We don't know. But one thing we know, we are alive. Put ourselves together to be the bond slaves of Jesus Christ and do his bidding. And take that rocky, dusty path of obedience. That's what it is called. Let's close in prayer.
Can you talk to the Lord? Can you speak to him?